Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. I saw my guest today, Adi Mopidevi, speak at an event not too long ago, and I really liked his slides. So I really wanted to get him on the channel just to talk to him more about him and public speaking in general. He has a background in computer science. He started off as a developer and is now a CTO. So I'm interested to learn more about the evolution of his career, his thoughts on public speaking, and of course those slides that I mentioned. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Adi.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure talking with you today.
So first question, Adi, where did your interest in computer science come from?
It's probably from my school days. I was very big. I was like very much interested in physics and chemistry while I was doing it, and then that's when we kind of got introduced to semiconductors in our school. And then we had a computer lab when I was in my ninth grade. So that's when the interest started. And then I was sure that somehow or other I wanted to relate with computers as I go forward. So that's when it started, and I got introduced to programming in my, I think, intermediate second year, like which is 12th grade, equivalent to 12th grade.
Okay,
That's how it started.
nice. So next question I have. So I mentioned in the intro that you initially worked as a developer. Is that something you always intended on doing, or is that something you stumbled into?
No, I was like, when I started my bachelor's, I think in my second year, I was very clear that I wanted to be a developer. I was doing very well on programming. Even my Think Week papers were mostly technology related, and all of my effort has been in, building systems from scratch. So that was a core interest I had right from my bachelor's. In fact, that's the interest that helped me to get the job at Microsoft as a developer.
Okay, so I've had other people on the channel who have described themselves as software developers, others as software engineers. Is there a difference?
Uh, I particularly in the field where I work, it's technically there is no difference. Developers are mostly focused on. So there's a difference between programmers and developers. Probably developers is a little more coders, programmers, or developers. As we move forward in your career, you'll probably be doing system design a little bit more, like working with the product manager or with the project manager, identifying, so getting a complex problem to a high level design and then to a low level design and then giving it out to the coders. So most of us start as coders. Literally, what do is you get a task, you code for it, and you understand the nuances of writing better code. And then you move to, okay, code is solving some part of the problem. How about the next big problem? How about the next big problem? And that's how you essentially evolve. So developer is more like in the middle, and as you go up, like a senior developer or a principal is who understands the functional problem and takes it to the level of a coder and tells them this is what you need to do.
Okay, so when you start off as a coder, I know there are different languages out there that you can code in. So is there a particular language that is, I guess, more prevalent than others? So if you're interested in getting a job somewhere like a Microsoft, this is the language that you should know, and kind of if you can learn these other ones, that's cool. But if you don't know this one, you're out of luck.
Uh, so technically, I mean, at those times it was a little different. I think the prominent languages were C, C++, Java, and C Sharp. So for me, I was very good with Java when I joined Microsoft, though Microsoft wouldn't have appreciated that much. But if you look at the current trend, it's essentially what I normally do is what is the role I'm going for. That's how I go about it. Like if I'm going for a platform developer role, probably if it is on a distributed system side, it's probably Python or Java. That's what people are interested on. If I'm going on the enterprise side, that's the kind of company I want to work on. Then probably C Sharp comes into picture, C Sharp and Microsoft Stack. And and the other thing is awareness to the cloud, cloud capabilities, what we have, what kind of platforms you can leverage. So that would be the key ideal thing. It's basically depending on the role where you're headed towards. If you want to go into a data scientist role or you want to go into a machine learning developer role, you're very clear with your technology choices. So it's mostly role driven.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So also, I've had people on the channel that have, just like you, have a degree in computer science, and then they go down this path in tech. But then I've also
Mhm.
had people that didn't have a computer science degree at all and went to a code school for a certain amount of time and then got into companies that way. What are your thoughts on people that have those non-traditional backgrounds that go to code schools and then try to get jobs at companies?
I personally have a lot of respect for them because to essentially go out of their comfort zone, learn something literally from scratch and perform well. Even I had managers who are not from a kind of technical computer science schooling, but they have been exceptional in their stuff. Especially in US, I've met people who've been veterans, who've been in army, but they kind of came out and then they started learning coding and then being really good at their jobs. What essentially tells us is for software, the most important aspect is problem solving and how to apply what you have learned towards problem solving. So if your skill has been handling complex problems or having that analytical and logical reasoning in your mind, essentially all these technologies are just tools to enable you to solve those problems. How well you can understand the problem, how well you can kind of tell yourself that okay, this is how I'm going to approach it, and have multiple approaches and apply the technology. That's how I would say it.
Okay. And then I don't know. Also mentioned in the intro that you started off as a developer, but now you work as a CTO. What type of skill or what skills did you pick up from in between working as a developer and a CTO that you now use as a CTO?
Oh yeah. So the first and topmost skill of what I probably use in day out is how to see the big picture and go down to literally an execution level stuff. For example, say we are coming up with a new product or we're coming with a major release for one of our customers. So what do we do is, okay, we know at a broad 100,000 feet level, okay, this is what we want to do. But from there, how do you literally break the system down to like 75,000, 50,000, 30,000, 20,000, and finally take it to a state where a coder on your team can literally go ahead and program for it. Similarly, a software quality engineer on your team can go ahead, understand the system, and then write test cases for it. That is a tough skill, I would primarily say, because most of the time what happens is if you miss some detail in the middle, your project goes sidelines, and then you lose time, you lose quality, and then your team gets frustrated. So this is a very tough skill to crack. It took me a while. It took me almost like I kind of figured this out when I was in I think probably 6 years in Microsoft, and then I started focusing on this particular skill almost like for 4 years. So that's when I was very confident, like, okay, fine, this is how we really do it. So it took me a while, but that's the most important skill, I believe.
Yeah. And obviously you said that you worked at Microsoft for a while, but to ascend to a CTO role at Microsoft is probably kind of pie in the sky. So eventually you had to go someplace else to become a CTO. Was that something you always planned on doing, or is that something you kind of stumbled into?
So 4 years down the line at Microsoft, I was very clear that I wanted to be an entrepreneur at some point of time or other, but I wasn't sure when it is going to happen. Mostly like my plan was, okay, I wanted to be a product manager at Microsoft. Then I didn't get I didn't get enough opportunity in the team I was working with. I was mostly into a developer roles then. Then I got an opportunity to work with a startup in a different city in India. So then I accepted that role, worked with them for a while, understand what is that it really goes in startup, how do you build teams, what are the other kind of non-tech challenges you get into. And finally, after 1.5 years of working with them, that's when I started on my own.
Have you found any differences between startups in India and startups here in the US?
That's actually a very good question. There is definitely quite a bit of a difference, because in India, the culture is slightly different with respect to the startups. Now it's much better, like especially in the last 4 years. But when I started off, people were kind of afraid to get into startups because of business continuity. What if you lose your job? Or what if it doesn't succeed? What if you lose your money? And then once you work for a startup and then if it doesn't work, you want to go for another job, people used to consider it as a gap in your career, right? It used to be tough. But here I see that the culture is a little different. People accept that, okay, it's fine, you tried something, that's a good sign. And then you kind of not necessarily watched only from that angle. You're kind of looked upon as a value add for your team when you bring that kind of experience. And I think India has developed that thought process in the last 5 years, because right now it's like way high. If you look at the number of people who want to work for startups, it's way high right now. So people doesn't matter that anymore. But at that point of time, that was a definite difference when I got started.
I would think that that would be the just in the case in general. I know just from my own experience that there are a lot of Indians that come to the U.S. and come to work for these companies, and they come on these on those on the I guess the H-1B visas, but then
Hmm.
it's really difficult to be able to stay long term because of the backlog
Yes.
of Indians that would
Yes.
like to stay on green cards. So I'm sure a lot of them end up leaving and going back to India or going back to other countries, and they have
Yeah.
all this knowledge now from these companies that they worked for. So what are they going to do with it? They go back to where they're from and they start companies.
Yep. It's a very interesting scenario. I agree with you. People, in fact, my first company, what I started was in India only. And then the second company, what we started, which I'm working for, AdTech, is what we started both in US and India, because we were more into building a consulting business. But most of the product companies, what my friends are doing back in India, they're actually India based right now. And there's a lot of potential, a lot of, if you look at even the large scale companies, right? Amazon's, Microsoft, Facebook, they have great campuses across the country. They hire a lot of talent, retain a lot of talent there itself. So it's a great place to be there as well. So it's good for them. I'm happy about it.
Yeah, it certainly helps. It helps the Indian economy, that's for sure. Taking all that knowledge from elsewhere and bringing it back home, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's the best way to learn. And then probably they work really hard when they're here because they know that it's a time bound opportunity, right? So people understand. For example, understanding US healthcare domain is very difficult staying out of US. Understanding probably how insurance works here is very difficult staying out of US. So when they have been here, they see the problem and then they kind of go work with like-minded people. They have a chance to build a product for it or build a service for it.
Nice. So, now I'll ask you some questions about public speaking because, as I said in the intro, I know of you because I was in the audience during one of your presentations during your presentation at San Diego Tech Hub, and the first thing that really struck me about your presentation was the slides. So I get the sense that you put some thought into them. But first question about public speaking, though, is it something that you've always been good at? And if not, what have you done to get better at it?
So I've always been, I always like to go in front of people and talk, right from my school days. So I used to kind of represent my school in science exhibitions, kind of presenting the projects, what we did as a school and stuff like that. And I used to participate in inter-college debate competitions and stuff like that. So I was always a talker for good and bad reasons. But what happened was when I was in my bachelor's, doing my bachelor's, Microsoft had a program called Academic Developer Evangelism. I don't know if it is there in US with the same name, but I'm sure it is there. So what do they do is from every college, they represent one student as a student champ of the college. And what's this guy's job is to kind of work with Microsoft team, learn that technology and take it back and tell in the college to others, to his friends, to his teachers, and do some projects and stuff like that. So I was very active in that space. What I used to do was .NET was very new back in 2002, 2003. So I was one of the first I was the first person in my college to literally explore on .NET and then talk about it to my friends and stuff like that. So I got an opportunity to go to different colleges, talk about this, tell them what cool things they can do. So that's how it got. That's how my probably active public speaking got started.
Okay. And when it comes to putting your presentations together, do you have a process for that? And if so, what is it?
So, well, in fact, the presentation what you've seen on San Diego Tech Hub, it probably took like 6 hours for me across 3-4 days. So what do I do is I normally go with a story. The first thing I would like to do is how soon can I connect to the audience? So that's the first question I normally ask. So most of my first slide is always about that. So if you remember that my question was, I was asking everybody in the audience to reflect back what is their best day was. So the goal was to kind of connect with them, understand with them, and then go through that journey. It's not someone like, okay, someone is just standing up there and giving a talk. It's more around we as a group of people sitting together. Can we go through a process or can we go through a discussion of an idea? And does it make sense? And that's why the stories change when we talk, depending upon how the audience is reacting. And so that's the first thing I do. And then I probably want to normally stick to 3 major points, what I want to convey in my discussion. and then I try to tell them across, and then I kind of come back and touch base on them. So that's depending upon the length of the presentation, that's what I stick to normally. So this is the standard thought process what I have in my mind, and I give a lot of importance to visuals. So I spend most of my time is actually searching for visuals. That's what I normally do.
Yeah, it was definitely evident from your presentation. And it actually reminded me of another presentation that I attended maybe, I guess, a year ago. I was at a conference, and the majority of it was a 1 day conference, and the majority of the presentations were absolutely horrendous, Adi. They were terrible. They were supposed to be 5 minutes in length. Damn near everybody went over time. So that's always annoying, especially around lunchtime. And not only
Yeah,
that, there wasn't a whole lot of visuals, a whole lot of text on a slide, and they're reading the slides. So there's definitely no story there, Adi. There's no journey. They're not taking the audience on any kind of journey. They're reading the slides, and they're going over time, and they're getting out of there as quickly as possible. And the
yeah. So I
presentation to
think
me that stood.
visuals make a,
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry.
Repeat that.
I said visuals make a lot of difference. Like one of the stuff I remember is I had a, what gets measured gets done. That's my favorite slide in the whole presentation for that. Um, we have that apprehension to measure. So when I was searching the visual for it, there's a guy a hand is trying to hold the coffee spoon or whatever. Right? There's an apprehension. So there's a lot in the story. What happens is the moment people connect to one or two slides like that, they are with you. They're actually waiting on, okay, what next you're going to say? What is the next interesting slide you have? What is the next interesting story you have? So it's fun.
Yeah, for sure. And just like I was saying, the person that was at the one presentation that stood out from all of those presentations was very similar to yours in the fact that there was very minimal text on the slides, and it was obvious that they put a lot of thought into the visuals. And I think
Yes.
that definitely made the presentation. And as I said, it was evident in his presentation, and it was evident in yours as well. I
Yeah.
know you said that you've always been interested or pretty good at public speaking, but do you ever get nervous? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Um, I mean, I used to get nervous much before, and I used to follow the same rule. I spoke about that story in the San Diego Tech Hub event as well. Absolute clarity brings confidence. So, what is the first thing I work on whenever I get a little nervous is that what is that I want to talk, and am I clear about it? So, I keep asking that question again and again to myself. So, if you look at on the whiteboard, literally, what do I do is I come and I say, okay, after the first slide, what is that I want audience to get? After the second flight, what is that I want them to get? I literally make myself very clear. In fact, I don't rehearse. I don't kind of do much of rehearsals. But what I do is I stick to the plan of my content. I stick to my screenplay. I like, okay, this is the story I want to say, and this is what I want them to get. And if at all I see that they're not getting engaged, I'll skip a little bit. So I kind of build that story in my mind. That gives me confidence. So that's how I'm like, okay, even if it is going the other way, I'm actually confident enough that, okay, let me change the whole context of the presentation. So that's how I prepare myself. So if I'm prepared for everything, I don't expect audience to react in a certain way. So it gives me that stability. I'm like, okay, I'm prepared for everything now. Let's go have fun. So that's how I normally look at it.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. You definitely have to have a lot of confidence in your public speaking abilities to be able to shift and pivot, make changes on the fly. I know people especially when they're first starting out, they want to stick to a script. Some people even want to
Yes.
read it out, and that's just not a really good way of engaging an audience. And your ideas
Yes.
of using story to keep people's attention and potentially skipping things to keep people's attention if you see it you're losing them. And especially if you're able to do it in the moment, those are great skills to be able to build on.
Yep. And I think most of it comes with being honest about yourself that you're going to add value to the people. So it's almost like having a conversation with someone whom you think is really important. Like if I'm talking to my son and I see that I'm telling him something, he doesn't understand that. So I have to literally change gears. I can't keep on telling him the same thing. So I have to figure out a way. So if you have that empathy towards your audience, that they're sitting there for a reason, they're giving you that opportunity to tell them what you know, and you both of you together can actually make a meaningful use of the time. So when you're honest about it, I believe that most of the nervousness comes down and you can be more clear about what you want to talk.
You know what, Adi? If you've always thought this way, kudos to you. I know when I first started giving presentations in front of, at work, yes, in corporate settings, I didn't take any of this into account at all. I was one of those people that would slap a
Okay.
bunch of slides together. I wasn't concerned with visuals. I would put a bunch of text on the slides. I'd read them off, and I'd get out of there as quickly as possible. And I noticed that
Oh,
I had to get better at it at public speaking, because a lot of the questions that I'd get after I finished presenting were questions I thought I had answered during the presentation, but because I didn't present the information in a way that the audience could take in, I was getting these questions still. So it really was a waste of my time in haphazardly putting a presentation that the audience wouldn't appreciate, and it was a waste of the audience's time because they're just sitting there, just listening to somebody that they don't really connect with, don't really understand. So I mean, as I said, if this is something that you've come to early on in your career, I mean, I commend you.
oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Because I remember in one of the, I did some technical trainings as well when I was back in India. So even technical trainings can be really boring because you just keep talking about one technology, going in depth and stuff. So that's when I kind of started innovating on that aspect, bringing in more of a behavioral aspect into our technology, and started telling people around, love yourself as a developer, then technology is just like a game of cricket or a game of soccer, whatever. You start enjoying the game, right? Soccer, you play the same game every time, nothing changes, but you're all hyped up when you go into the game, like, yes, I'm going to play. So that's the kind of thought process I used to bring into technical trainings, and that really helped me to evolve my storytelling.
Right. So if you're somebody listening or watching who wants to get better at public speaking, I'm a firm believer in focus on one thing first, and then focus on other things afterwards. So the first thing that somebody should focus on if they want to get better at public speaking, in your opinion, what is that?
So my opinion would be is convince yourself that whatever you're going to talk is going to add value to the people who are listening. It can be anyone. It can be a bunch of kids, professionals, executives, whatever it is. If you're convinced that hey, whatever I'm saying here is going to add value to them, they're going to listen. That's the first one. And back that up with proper reviews from professionals, and then back it up with a visual content. So if you have these three, you will definitely have a compelling story, and the conviction will literally flow because you're absolutely convinced that this is going to add value to them. That would be my single point of advice.
Wonderful. That's excellent advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about the things that you're currently working on?
Right now, I mean, we're working in San Diego, and being part of events like San Diego Tech Hub is awesome. I would actually encourage any of the people around here to just drop into events like those, and who are interested in public speaking, seek out for opportunities in this area. And I'll be more than happy if we run into any conversation in any of the events. We can talk about it more. I'll be more than happy to talk to anyone about it.
Wonderful. So how can people get in touch with you?
I can give my email, and I can give my LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch. I kind of check it every evening. So I can probably share that with you. Adi Mopidevi, that's what I am on LinkedIn. People can send me an invite, and I'll go through it, and people can ask me any question, whatever they want.
Wonderful. This marks the end of another episode of Teach the Geek interviews. Again, my name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care. Thanks, Adi.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you so much.